Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Portal Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I hope you're having a wonderful day. It's a happy Tuesday. I had a happy Tuesday. Kind of a lethargic day, I guess, all things considered, but I'm here all the same. I was a couple minutes late. Thank you for your patience. I usually at the end of the night get the podcast for the next day all uploaded and stuff. So today I was just like, I'm going to get it done ahead of time just because I had some time. And I had ran into a couple hiccups that just took me a few more minutes. But thank you for being patient. I'm here and I'm ready to entertain you. Hopefully you are all set to go. And I know I'm ready, but I hope you are because it's time for bed. All right, everybody. All right. Oh, I knew this. You kind of threw me. It says Donna is reading bedtime stories tonight. I'm like, what? What? Do you see a beard? Come on. Really? Nothing. Clean shaven. I am definitely not Don. But thank you guys all for being here. It's wonderful to see you all. That was you're talking about the confessionals, the deep underground military bases. Yeah, that was a good show. I did check that out yesterday or today. One of the two, I checked it out. I don't remember. The days kind of bleed together, believe it or not. But it was a good show. It was a long show. But that lady seemed to have a world of experiences going on over there. Very good show. If you haven't checked it out, go check out the Confessionals podcast. Definitely worth a listen. As well as Sasquatch Chronicles' new podcast is out as well. So just all kinds of great episodes going on. Our Monday episode is out there as well. It's called Creating Ghosts. It was an interview I did with a gentleman who's been a longtime friend of the show and contributor and guest, and his name is Sean Gonzalez. He's also a psychic who's helped a bunch of people deal with problematic hauntings and spiritual attachments and stuff. And I've gotten so many wonderful feedback from people he's helped. People just swearing up and down that, Sean really took care of their problems. So he is the real deal. But he was talking about people manifesting their own ghosts and going into the mechanics of that a little bit. And I think that it was a really cool episode because sometimes people can do that. Oftentimes, I guess the most classic example of people manifesting their own hauntings would be in poltergeist situations that deal with young pubescent girls who, for some reason or other, and it's not every pubescent girl, obviously, otherwise there'd be a lot more poltergeist hauntings, but just in some of them, that's the common denominator, where there's a young girl just going into puberty and suddenly she's being tormented by this amazingly high energy activity. And many parapsychologists believe that these girls are actually manifesting their own haunting. And it's through some latent PK or psychokinetic powers that they have, and pretty powerful stuff. But Sean goes into how we all have the tendency, in many cases, to produce our own manifestations. And if you haven't listened to it, it's worth a listen. Just a really great guy and full of great information, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. Tomorrow's podcast is Don and I talking about the UFOs again. We got a bunch more stories of people encountering UFOs and discussing that, as well as the idea that there are many different types of races represented here on Earth. And we go into that a little bit. So have a listen to that tomorrow, and that'll be available at midnight. So, but I'm hoping to entertain you here tonight. I've got some stories pulled up, some of which I pulled up last night, but they were way too long because I just do random pulls as the night goes on, looking at the clock, and then I just managed to pull up just a truckload of pretty long stories here. So I'm going to get into those now, right at the top of our show tonight. So the first story is coming out of the state of Virginia. It says, to fully understand this story, please... Oh, come on, don't do that. I hate it when they refer to another story that they'd written because it's... I'm not going to catalog and track their whole chain of stories, but they reference another story that had to do with an elemental in the forest. It was about November 2006 now, and I've gained a close friend. Something still intrigued the both of us, though. We wanted answers as to what was out there. He told me all he knew of the forest in hopes that maybe it would all fall in place for us. And he's been living in this house for as long as he can remember, and he used to play back in the woods when he was little. One time when he was back there, he came across a creature which was described as being approximately 7 feet tall, black skin with a chameleon-like texture, no mouth, and only 2 eyes that were as dark as the coals. Hands that had fingers that stretched for 6 inches and longer, with sharp nails on the end, and, to me the scariest thing of all, it walked chicken style. Chicken style, or reverse knees. So instead of your knees being vertical with the kneecap in the middle facing forward, they bend backwards with the joint facing the opposite way. I was shocked to learn of this thing and terrified at the same time, and he spoke about the center of the forest where there's a circle where nothing grows, surrounded by bramble, devil's walking sticks, briars, and other thorny dry shrubs. And at the circle's center, candle wax was found. That's not usually a good sign. This is all starting to make sense now, and a plausible story forming about the possibility of rituals and seances in the woods. It would explain a lot of the activity in the area. With this new information, we decided to head out again, but nowhere near where we were the last time, and I really didn't want to upset whatever that was that broke the tree branch. We walked along the edge of the woods again, but everything was silent. No fog, no noise, no shadows, no weird feelings, nothing. In fact, the forest felt rather inviting, but a quick thought about what may be lurking in there, quickly changed my mind. I actually believe there to be multiple spirits in the forest, and each one really has their own territory, like that they like to stake out or something. The elemental near the back end of the field, the spirit that likes to play tricks and help the bejesus out of people, wanders my friend's backyard and part of the forest edge. And of course, what we think to be at the center of all this activity, the demonic entity. After a much uneventful stroll, nothing was going on, and what is worse, we even brought another friend to experience the activity here with us, only to have nothing happen at all, but everything was about to change. About 20 minutes had passed, and we were walking back to the house. All of us suddenly got a something is watching us feeling at exactly the same time. The new friend we brought with us stated that she smelled fireworks. I knew the smell all too well, sulfur. I realized what was going on, and immediately images began flashing in front of me. Most of them were undecipherable and didn't really mean anything, kind of like static on a TV, but one stuck out to me. A goat's head. Something was getting close, and we didn't want to stick around to find out what it was. We reached the house and ran inside. We each sat down and took a load off while we watched a little TV and fired up the GameCube upstairs in my friend's room. We played for probably about 45 minutes before we heard a woman scream. It was my friend's sister. She ran into the room, tears streaming down her face. She muttered, "I was in my room working on my laptop and I saw a shadow, and all of a sudden the power turned on and off, and probably 4 or 5 times. We comforted her and let her know that we were all here for her if she wanted to talk about it, and eventually she got to feeling better, so she ventured back into her room to get her things to finish her work elsewhere, and at this point we were all worried about what it was that scared her. Was it that thing that we felt? Probably not, but we'll never know." The weeks passed and activity in and around the forest began to wane to nothing. That is, until October came around again. A year later. My girlfriend at the time was very interested in the paranormal, and I told her stories at this place, and she insisted we make the hour-and-a-half drive to my friend's place. So we headed over there to check it out again. For whatever reason, she was particularly hung up on the elemental story, and she had to see this one up close. We arrived to a warm reception as usual and began investigating as soon as the darkness set in. This past year was a really odd year. I spoke to my friend about the activity he was experiencing this year, and he said that it has been extremely weak this year. He's saying this really did not lend a lot of credibility to the stories he told, because it showed me he wasn't just trying to make me think he had all these cool and adventurous tales out at his place. It did perplex me on why activity was so low, but regardless, we went back to the entrance of where the elemental lives. The whole walk there lacked even the smallest creepy feeling, and we came up to the entrance right where the light and the short is, only this time the light didn't flicker once. We all gladly walked back much past where I stopped the last time, up to another entrance of sorts, and the dirt road continued, but there was a heavy overgrowth on either side, and the blackness was so dark and unforgiving, which is in stark comparison to before, where the side of the road was sparse, open, and well lit. And this was the back door into the forest, and then we were about to step in. We were in two at a time. My girlfriend and my friend went first because a third friend didn't want to go in there, so I stayed outside with her to keep her company. As soon as the two of them stepped into the blackness, something caught my eye. A shadow in the bush behind the third friend. I figured it was an animal of sorts, but then again, I got that I am being watched feeling. We then both heard a rustle come from behind her. She turned around only to see nothing, and at this point we didn't care if it was a wild dog or a spirit. We didn't want to get hurt. We called for them to return, which they promptly did, after we already made a hasty retreat back to the safety of the streetlight, which went out as soon as we approached it. As the two of them were exiting, something darted from the bushes, stopped in the middle of the road, and looked at the two of them, and then ran onto the other side of the bushes. As soon as it had made its way partially back into the bushes, both my friend and my girlfriend turned their heads because, well, at the time I didn't know, yet they sensed something behind them. I knew what I saw, so I asked both of them, "Why did you turn your heads around?" They replied, "I thought I saw something behind me." We had seen the same thing. My friend did say whatever it was also in the darkness of the forest with him. He had seen it upon leaving the woods, right as we heard the noises, and I'm still willing to call it an animal, but I will say that it's one fast animal. We walked back to his house and discussed what we felt, the forest entrance, and made our way back to the car. We said our goodbyes, and we headed back home. This is the last of my personal experiences with the woods, and I only have stories and histories of the woods, such as the story of how my friend went into the woods with a group of friends after dark, and why he refuses to ever do that again, and other tales of the elemental and the sly spirit in his backyard, which I am willing to share using email or instant messaging. I do, however, have many more personal experiences elsewhere. I look forward to putting them to words and posting them here. That's, I don't know. It sounds like a lot of personal experiences, nothing really over the top, but then again, they didn't really push anything. They just went in and got kind of spooked and left. So, apparently repeatedly. But I don't blame them. I mean, if you're not feeling really comfortable or confident in what you're doing, then it's probably best just to walk away. Take the small scare and call it a day, rather than push and prod just to try to get something really profound to happen, because there's some things that can happen you just can't come back from. I'm not saying that it would be deadly necessarily, but you can't unsee certain things, and you can't unexperience certain things, and sometimes it's better to leave the darkness in the darkness. All right, the next one's from Indiana. Our son is almost 5 years old and is normally a naturally healthy young man. In most situations, he can survive another threat of any nasty bug that hits his sitter's home. Sorry, I didn't know. I was reading it and I was like, sister or sitter? And it's sitter's home, with the grace of someone whose immune system is in advanced stages of perfection. However, this past Saturday at the Super Bowl party at the local VFW, he came in contact with one that he could not fight off on his own. By the time Super Bowl Tuesday, or Super Tuesday, rolled around, he could not keep water down, even with the use of a Phenergan liquid and brown rice broth. I'm not sure what Phenergan, Phenergan liquid and brown rice broth. In our concern, we contacted his personal doctor, who directed us immediately to take him to the emergency room in the local hospital. My husband rushed to the sitters and took him there, as I was several cities away, and it would take me legally 2 hours to get to him. Just as a side note, it took me less than an hour that day to arrive at the hospital. When I rushed into the room, he beamed his smile in my direction and filled me in on what had already transpired. His daddy by his side, he said, "Why do you look worried? It's Daddy's turn." I had to smile. He has such a simplistic way of looking at things, and in that we see his wisdom. After about an hour of sitting and waiting to make sure the extra medications would help him fight this off, we heard the unmistakable sounds of an ambulance arriving. As I was still in scrubs, I was asked to help in the transference of the inflicted into the room where he would be examined. I hastily tried to explain that I have no medical training and was in no position to administer any type of medical assistance. I was still urged down the hall to the waiting open doors of the ER. The gentleman had a self-inflicted wound to his chest, and the outlook was not good. No one was talking to him, and they talked amongst themselves in the normal medical lingo that most of us struggle through, and steadfastly would not look down on the gurney at this man. I looked down at him as we were rushing him to the exam room and caught his eye, and then greeted him. I asked his name, age, and how he came to be where he was at the time. I asked about his family, about pets. And that was quite a long hallway, and I felt I knew the basics about him by the time we got him settled into a room that had the medical staff soon vacated. When I finally looked up out of the depths of those desperately deep brown eyes, I realized that we were alone, save for the nurse prepping him for his procedure. Deep inside, I cried out for his safety and for the release of this fear that bound him. While walking back to my son's room, a single thought repeated itself frequently. Do not leave him. I kept answering that thought with, I am not. I'm heading to his room now. My husband took one look at me and wryly smiled, knowing my inner turmoil. My son said, "Go back. He needs you too." As I struggled with the idea to return to the man, as opposed to staying with our son hopped off the bed and took my hand and walked me down the hall, around the corner, down another hall, and into the man's room. I didn't tell him where to go. Neither did I tell him it was a man that I had talked to. No one stopped us as we took that walk. We passed 2 nurses and the doctor who was treating our son. We passed 2 nurses' stations, and still no one stopped us. I stood in the curtainway and watched my son go to the bed and reach down to pick up the man's hand as it hung over the side of the bed. Startled, he looked up and saw me standing there, and I then explained that our son was there for treatment also and that he wanted to see the man. Tears glistened in the man's eyes, and he touched our son's face so gently. I knew him to have children of his own. The 2 men talked for a little bit, and soon my husband was walking down the hall searching us out, and our son was being released as the doctor had seen to him while I was helping out the ER staff, and he was being sent home, and the man understood and thanked us for taking the time to sit with him, and he said he felt like no one was there to help him, and he wanted to go home. Our son stopped in the curtainway, turned around, and walked back up to the gentleman. He again took his hand and said, "When you get back home, please tell Jerome you will never leave again. You tell him that you are there to stay. He does not like being alone." The man positively crumbled. I could actually see him shrink in stature and deflate within himself. He looked up at me and asked, "Who is this little man?" We had no clue of knowing what was that while The father was rushed to the same hospital that we were in. His son was taken to the children's hospital in Indianapolis. Apparently what had happened was that they were practicing a dangerous sport and the son was mortally wounded. The father had not yet been told of his son's fate. After the helicopter came to take his son, the father was so distressed that he wounded himself in the same manner that his son was wounded. This took only seconds, as no one had yet removed the weapon in question. And on the news this morning was the telling of the father's fate as well. Wow. That's some pretty serious child there. Wow. What a beautiful thing. I guess they were there because they needed to be there, huh? All right, the next one's coming from Florida. Let me get through the fluffy stuff. The paranormal activity that's been going on in my home is not really frightening per se, but it's a little unnerving, I guess, only because I've had many different experiences, from psychic phenomena to ghostly talking or crying to physical manifestations, and I don't know what they want from me. This has been going on for a couple of months, maybe a little longer, but I haven't submitted my experiences on here because I would try to write it off as something logical, and that's just how I am. Besides, it started off as little things here and there, and now it's getting more frequent, stronger and stranger. So here we go. A couple of months back, I was sick with a bad cold and started hearing little children playing. Yeah, I do have children, but this was at night when everyone else was asleep but me, of course. Then the next weird thing that started happening immediately was the short little flicks of shadow people. So I think out of my peripheral vision. They were low to the ground and very quick in movement, and the telltale definition of a true shadow person. Little children playing, low to the ground, little flicks of darkness. The next thing I experienced was more on either the telepathic perspective or psychic, which I do not consider myself psychic by any means, or perhaps both. I was having visions of something happening, something very silly or small, and I would say, and it would happen when I was awake. Then, after those incidences, I dreamt of my mother-in-law's living room being all nice and cleaned up, not cluttered. You see, she is somewhat of a collector, you could say. And I dreamt we were all sitting in this cleaned-up, non-cluttered pack rat of a living room, enjoying time with each other. That same morning, my husband went to work out and then went to his mother's house to unclutter the foyer so he could open the French doors to the living room so he could clean it, and we could visit his mother at her home and be comfortable. I had no idea he was doing this that day, or any day for that matter. I was surprised that this was what he had planned for that day at his mother's, since I had that dream. I guess this is a psychic night. I told him after the fact about my dream and asked him if he was thinking about doing that as he was walking out of the bedroom to leave the house while I was still sleeping. What I am getting at, and I am really trying to explain this the best I can, so I hope you understand, is that I know that I dreamt this during the morning hours in the midst of him leaving, because I'm a real light sleeper and he woke me up coming in and out of the bedroom. However, I did not wake up at the time he walked out of the bedroom to leave the house. What I'm wondering is if there's some telepathic connection between us, since we are so close. We're not just husband and wife, but very best friends. And what do you guys think? I would consider it to be a telepathic connection rather than something psychic. And I don't really know that in many cases there's a difference, but this person seems to make a distinction. Because after all, it's just mental to mental communication. It doesn't have to be manifest physically. Any kind of consciousness can be telepathic, even if it's disembodied. The next thing is that I was in the backyard smoking a cigarette late at night. I was by myself, sitting in one of my white plastic backyard furniture chairs with my feet propped up on another white plastic chair, so I'm sitting there enjoying my cigarette with my Pomeranian pup in my lap, and I noticed this orb go across the back of the chair that my feet were propped up on. And now no one else was up in the house. The house was dark as well as the backyard that I was in. However, me trying to debunk a situation like that, I go ahead and look all over to see if it was a reflection of something. No luck with that. There was nothing logical or normal about it. So I leaned back in my chair and continued to do what I was doing. And another one goes by on the chair in the same manner. And then a third time. And that was the last of it. By the way, these orbs were not completely round, and they were slow moving. From left to the right, they would move. Oh yeah, and they were all blue. I've been hearing about experiences with blue orbs from my two good friends that recorded their experiences. Is this a connection? Last but certainly not least, my husband woke up early the other morning, and instead of waking me up by turning on the TV in the bedroom, he got his pillow and blanket and went to the living room. He said that while he was out there, he saw a shadow person, very dense, by our fireplace, which would be to the right of our TV. And he said it just stood there for a few minutes staring. No eyes that I'm aware of, but, how you can feel that's a certain stare whenever you see someone or something's face or not. He then proceeded to tell me that it turned towards the TV and disappeared right into the side of the TV. Our television is one of those big, wide, tall ones that stand the height of about a 5'6" person. So he just turned and walked right into it. Blah, freaky. The other night I heard a woman talking and then a weeping sound in the distance. Again, this is while everyone is asleep. And what is going on? I thought I was mainly rid of these beings, but now they are back, and I don't know why or what they want. Why are they back all of a sudden? I mean, I still have paranormal things happen here and there, but not as often and not as aggressive. It seems to be getting stronger and more persistent. I have a pretty tight connection with two people that have recorded their experiences, and I'm wondering if this has anything to do with it. Nothing at all that I'm trying to indicate, just wondering if their paranormal happenings are coming to me. I know I've had these things happen to me in the past, but why has it come back so suddenly? Very strange. So here's what I think about that. I think that when you experience something paranormal, in the case of hauntings and stuff, I do believe that it may, in many regards, turn on your senses, turn up your senses, kind of kick them into overdrive. And after that, after you have whatever experiences you have, even if the haunting ends and you're able to cleanse it or eradicate it or whatever, I think that you are left with traces of it because it's an interaction of spirit to spirit. So if you're experiencing some kind of energetic apparition, you are also experiencing it with your energy. And so does it create a resonance of sorts? And is there some sort of link that forms because of that? And by virtue of that, is there a resonance that changes you as the observer? Are you altered in some way by having perceived that? Now, I would just like to point out that people that see UFOs are much more likely to experience it a second or third time. And there's some people looking for UFOs that will never, ever see them. Same thing with people that experience Bigfoot. Many, many people that have had encounters with Bigfoot talk about more than one. So does something get turned on in our awareness, maybe in our senses, that a switch gets flipped deep in our psyche or in our spirit, that we are more receptive to receiving those kind of things after they happen the first time? I know that's, like if you watch Ghost Adventures, Zach Bagans, when he first started, I think he was interested in the paranormal, and he had apparently seen an apparition first, and that's what spurned his interest. But throughout the course of the shows, as the seasons have continued, he talks more and more about the vibes he gets, and it seems to me that he's developed maybe a sense or a sensitivity to that spiritual energy in some way. Now, I'm not saying he's a full-blown psychic now, but I believe that just by virtue of being in all of these locations and such, and of course having the haunted museum on top of that, that it has probably altered him to some degree. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. I'm just saying, could that be? And it seems to me that there's something to that by experiencing it, you could perhaps be, I don't know, hot wiring your own awareness in essence. So, and is that good or bad or otherwise? I don't know. It's up to the person, I guess, whether or not they can handle that paradigm shift or not. But, I think it's, it's something to consider anyway, because that does seem to come up quite a bit. All right. The next one is coming from Michigan. Michigan again. Oh, speaking of which, I got to call my cousin after the show. Once the mind expands to accept a concept or an ideal, it can never again conform to its original dimensions. Wow, beautiful. That's perfect, Duck. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm thinking. So you've summarized it very well in that quote from whomever. Very cool. Hey, Duke, good to see you. I see there's quite a few of you in here, so let me just go through and see who is in here. We have Beth Fierce. We have Julia Blacktree's in here. Good to see you, Julia. Duke is in here. Cha-Cha's in here. Cha-cha-cha-cha. Sorry. I just felt rather rhythmic when I said that. D is in here. Good to see you, D.H. Digger Dog is in here. Duck Sauce. Gemini Moon is in here. I Am Pam is in here. Lisa Heilman is in here. Louis Ta is here. MCAT. Good to see you, MCAT. And good to see you, Ken, bringing up the Australian connection. Great to see you all. Thank you all for being here. That's just the participants that's showing up on my list. But I see October Storm, or Oct Storm, is in here. And welcome to the show. That's a new name. I can say I've never seen that one before. So, Brown Dwarf's lurking, he says. Elaine Clifford, good to see you. Thank you, Julia. Julia's always great. She's always posting up these reminders and notices and stuff. You rock, Julia. Thank you, dear. But if I missed anybody, I do apologize. I'm just scrolling through quick to see that that list that's given isn't always very complete. But yeah, Duck Sauce, thanks for that quote. That's perfect. That really fits perfectly. So let's see what's going on in Michigan. Hi. All right. This took place in Michigan in the late 1990s. I worked in the afternoon shift, 3 p.m. until about midnight at a gas station convenience store called Stop and Shop. I worked these hours for about a year and a half, and I worked alone in the store on my shift, and once in a while I worked until 5 a.m. and the next morning when others never showed up to work. Nice. Where this store was located was on a main drag in the country, where the houses were far between and the store was up to the right of it, but it closed at 5 p.m. Other than that was a house kitty corner from the Stop and Shop store, and one house way down the road from it, no street lights, only the lights to where the gas pumps were. I worked for about 9 months before anything took place, and then one night, near midnight, I heard the cans in the back room making noise, as if someone was throwing them into a container of sorts. In between my customers that night, I went to look in the back room to see if anyone was there, but I saw no one. So thought maybe it was mice or something. Mice don't usually throw cans around, but It was all quiet about 1 a.m., and I heard the noise again, and I just figured it was mice and kept doing my work. When my manager came in at 5, I told her I heard noise in the back room where we kept the filled and empty cans from beer and soda, and she said she called the guy who checks for mice and bugs, and I left and went home. My manager called me the next day and told me the guy found no signs of mice or bugs, and that they couldn't figure out what I heard. There was no holes in the walls or anything from outside that could come in, so I just said, okay. I went back to work a few nights later, and nearing midnight, I heard the noise again, and I still didn't think anything of it, and I went to the back room to get some items to stock the cooler with, and When I came out, there was 5 guys in the store, and I smiled at them and went to the counter where the cash register was, and one guy stood next to the counter with his back to me, and he appeared to have something in his coat pocket, ruh-roh, and he kept his right hand inside. And by what I could see of him, he was Hispanic. He never spoke at all, and the other 4 guys were Caucasian. They got beer, chips, and all kinds of snacks. One guy came up and bought some of the stuff and put it on the counter, and one of the Caucasians told me that this was a robbery. And I told them, let me help you get the money out. Which I took the whole drawer out and set it on the counter, and while doing that, pushed the silent alarm with my leg, and they told me thanks and left the store. The police came, and the report was taken, and I was off work for 2 days. I came back, and just before midnight, I heard that noise in the back room of the cans being tossed into something. I still wasn't afraid, thinking of what it could be, and didn't relate it to anything. A week later, the noise happened again just before midnight. At exactly midnight, the 5 same guys came back into the store. And I already knew what they were going to do, and I'm alone, but I kept my cool. Yeah, they robbed me again. And again, I used the silent alarm for the police and filed another report. I told the police it happens right after midnight, or right at midnight. I then went to the daytime shift after the second time I was robbed, and then this gal that worked with us, Crystal, not the gal's real name, was pregnant and in labor. And she had to leave work, so I went in to cover the rest of her shift. Got there at about 8. At just before midnight, the can noise happened again, and I thought, oh no, am I going to be robbed again? Sure enough, right at midnight, in came the same 5 guys, and the Hispanic man always stood in front of me with his hand in his pocket. He never spoke. It was always one of the other guys. The police came. I gave out another report. I called my manager and told her to come and run the store the rest of the night, or I was closing up the store and going home where I would be safe. She told me I had to stay there or I'd be fired. I said, fine, I'm fired. I handed the police officer the keys and said, it's got to be locked up before you leave. I've been fired. I tried to find out why that happened, and that I heard the noise just before midnight, and the robberies were always at midnight. While I worked, never found out anything about the store, if anything happened there, but certainly something warned me what was going to happen. 2 months later, those same guys robbed the same store a total of 6 times, and so the police stalked the store. It took them 6 times to actually set up a stakeout? Are you freaking kidding me? Those have got to be the worst police in the history of police. Well, you know, I would have been there, but I was eating my chips. Jeez. So the police staked out the store, and finally they were caught. They were very polite robbers, as they always told me thanks for helping them. They did that to the others they robbed too. I saw Crystal after she had her baby, and she told me that when she was robbed at noon twice, she heard the noises in the back room. Not sure if the manager heard anything before the robbers came in or not. Well, that's a good spirit to have around, I guess. That's not good. I mean, I'm glad nobody was hurt, but man, the place is robbed really like at midnight every time. And nobody thought maybe they should watch around the store at midnight. That is some terrible police work. All right, let's see what's going on. Let me check the clock here. I guess I forgot to say it, but the phone lines are always open here in the portal. If you have something you'd like to share, please feel free to call in. 720-923-0500. 720-923-0500. Excuse me. All right. Let's see what else we can dig into here. All right. Oh, no. I'll grab a couple more. 3 more, I think. Maybe they'll be long. Maybe they'll be short. Let's see. Nope. Medium size. This one's not bad. This one is coming from Pennsylvania. My boyfriend and I have been together for a little more than a year, and we've had ups and downs just like every other relationship, and sometimes we fight and we stay mad at each other for days, but That all stopped about 2 months ago, and I don't remember ever being as happy as I was during those 2 months. My boyfriend's parents had a beautiful relationship, and about 3 weeks ago, his dad asked his mom for a divorce. Jeez. It was a surprise to everyone. They weren't speaking to each other at all. About 2 or 3 days after that, I'm laying with my boyfriend on his bed watching a movie, and we turn the movie off and he gets up to paint. I decided to play a video game, and then I heard something weird, like the stereo of a car coming on from outside. It sounded like the person had a talk show on, but for some reason, it caught my attention, and I became very curious on what was being said on the stereo, and I couldn't make it out, so I turned the volume off of the game. I turned the volume of the game down, and as I'm turning the volume down, I heard a voice coming out of the speaker I had just turned the volume down for. The speaker was right next to my left ear, and my boyfriend heard it too. I laughed and turned the volume of the surround sound off, and then I heard a very deep, raspy voice say my boyfriend's name and then mine. We both just looked at each other, really puzzled. Then the voice repeated the names in that same order 2 more times. The next day, my boyfriend and I started fighting over nothing. And the fights usually happen around 8:30 at night, which is when we heard the voice. Every day since then, we've been fighting. We wake up in the next morning like nothing has happened. We're not mad, and we can't explain to each other why we fought. The strangest thing happened. My boyfriend's parents are speaking to each other like nothing happened between them, and me and my boyfriend are fighting. The arguments usually start in that room. 4 days ago, I'm in my house and I'm getting ready to go to a job interview, and I was home alone. My mom was at work, and I was getting out of the shower when I heard someone calling me from downstairs. I thought my mom had gotten out earlier. She forgot something, so I go downstairs, and there wasn't anyone there. I decided not to pay it any mind, and I started ironing my shirt, and I heard the bathroom door slam shut. I'd closed the door when I left the bathroom, so I couldn't find any explanation for it. I was ready to go, and for some reason, every time I walked towards the door, I remembered that I had forgotten something. I went back to get it, and it happened a couple of times, and it was as if I wasn't able to leave my house. My brother came home from school, and that's when I felt free to leave. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt trapped. I've been looking for answers all over the internet, and I can't find any explanation. I don't want my relationship to get ruined because of something neither one of us can control. Something needs the anger. Something's manipulating emotions. It is believed that some dark entities, and I'm not necessarily saying demons, but dark entities feed on anger, fear, sadness, all the negative emotions. And it's believed that if they aren't readily available, they will try to inspire those. And I'm not sure what it is that these emotions give them. If it's a sort of sustenance, if that's the energy that sustains them, I don't know. I can't think of a worse existence, though. That would just be horrid. But just terrible. I think you need to do some cleansing. That would be just a terrible situation to be responding to emotions that aren't even yours. And that's got to be a horrible feeling to be controlled and manipulated to such a degree. I think that's terrible. But a lot of people report such things. Oh no, I don't know if I can read this. Might have to do with an incubus. And I usually try to steer away from these stories because incubus stories are generally they're generally sexual, and I don't know. Let me just scan it quick. Oh, he bought a Ouija board. Yeah, that's always a bad start. Okay, well, I don't think it sounds too sexual, so I think it's actually more sleep paralysis than anything. So I guess I'll wing it and we'll see what's going on here. It says, I'm 19 from New York City, Brooklyn. And I've always been into the paranormal and the occult. And one day, when I was 14, I just learned about Ouija boards and found out that Parker Brothers makes them and that I can buy the Ouija boards at my local toy store. It's like such a bad idea. Well, I eventually saved enough money and bought the Parker Brothers Ouija board. The next few days after using the board several times, I wasn't getting any results, and I was using the board alone in the daytime and at night. And one day at around 1, I was using the Ouija board when I started yelling out, "Are there any non-human entities or deities that want to speak to me?" I kept on asking this question as well as similar questions for about 45 minutes. That's persistent as hell. I finally ended the Ouija board session and went to my room and listened to my stereo and just relaxed in my room. And I had this strange feeling that someone or something was watching me and circling me since I stopped using the Ouija board. This feeling was really intense and never went away no matter where I went in the house. I decided to go to sleep early that night because I thought that maybe the feeling would go away the next day, and I went to bed after watching TV for about an hour at about 9 p.m., and I was feeling more than fear. I just knew someone or something was watching me. After a few minutes of laying in bed, I suddenly became paralyzed, and when I closed my eyes, more like blinked, I saw this face. It was a face of what I think was a demon or an incubus. Its skin was charcoal black almost everywhere, except it had a few white stripes on its face from one side of its face to the other, and its eyes were yellow, and it had white horns all over its head, where the hair on your head is supposed to be. Its teeth were white, narrow, and pointy, and the whole experience lasted no more than 5 or 6 seconds from the paralysis onward. And after I opened my eyes, I felt much safer than I did that whole day. I knew that whatever it was had left me alone. For weeks after, I was bewildered by the whole incident. I couldn't explain what had happened and why the details were so precise. I even saw this thing's pores. The picture remains clear in my memory as if it had happened yesterday. And that's the whole account, so. Not good. You got to be careful with Ouija boards. Again, I'm not a big proponent of them being evil intrinsically, but I think they're just misused all the time because I don't think people really know what the hell they're doing. And, it is a manner of creating a pseudo seance, and it's a blind channel, and you got to be careful. This one's coming from New Hampshire. This is my second story, and the first story was something about an apartment. Blah, blah, blah. If you read that story, it'll explain some things that may be confusing in this story. I think I should have skipped it. Lately, when I'm washing clothes, the washer will stop for no apparent reason, almost like the knob has been pushed in, but it's not. I push the knob and pull it back out, and the washer will start right up. I should note that it stops at different spots in the cycles. Never the same spot, and not all the time, and I wash not all the time that I wash either. I've had a repairman look at it twice, and they can't find anything wrong with it. My computer is also taken to turning on when it's off, and I have everything computer-related plugged into a surge protector strip, and it still happens. I've tried the top and bottom outlets, and it continues. Recently, I rearranged things in my apartment, and the computer was one of the things I moved to a different room, and it has stopped turning on at night. We've gotten a kitten, last May, and I think he sees and hears things that we don't. I have had kittens and cats before that would perk up at different things, but this one is different. It's like he is really looking at something. He doesn't appear to be frightened, only mildly interested. My kids have also been hearing things, and it's happened to both my son and daughter. They'll be up in their rooms, and at different times they'll come find me downstairs and ask, "What did I want?" And I'll look at them like they're crazy, and they'll swear to me that I called them. It happens to them separately, never together. Maybe Bob thinks they're sitting around too much. I guess Bob's the name of the entity in his home or spirit in his home. I'm only guessing, but maybe. So, I don't know. We got time for another short one, I guess. If I can find another short one, I'll try. Yeah, this one's a short one. Okay. This is from Pennsylvania again. This story happened to me when I was about 15 years old, but it didn't seem to be all that evil. It seemed like it just wanted to tell me that it was there and that it was just visiting. About 2 years ago, I was home alone, and I have a graveyard in the backyard, and I was woken up to this loud bang coming from my room. I was on the couch in a one-story house, and when I got up and investigated my room, I found nothing wrong, so I was thinking the house shifted or something, but that's when I started. And then when I started to walk out, I heard my name, and I turned around and saw this soldier in my graveyard. We have soldiers from World War II and the Revolutionary War. But then when I blinked, he was gone. So I just figured I was dreaming or just crazy. But then the next night I was laying in my bed and I smelled a gun smoke kind of smell, and then it vanished, and I got up and went and told my mom, and she just blew it off like, it's not true, you're just imagining it. So supportive. It's just loving that support. But then 2 weeks later, I told her I was with her. But then about 2 weeks after I told her, I was with her, and we were sitting in the kitchen just talking. I heard the noise again, and this time she kind of believed me and said she was sorry about not believing me when I told her the first time. So 2 years later, the spirit hasn't come back, so I figure he was just visiting. Could be. I guess they gotta have something to do too. You know, there's a belief that the Sasquatch spend a lot of time watching us, like we are probably pretty entertaining. You know, they can only look at sticks and stuff in the forest for so long. So apparently they like to take journeys and look in our windows and see what we're doing. And I can understand that. I mean, you know, everybody needs some kind of mental stimulus. So I suppose the same could be true for spirits. If you think of a spirit, perhaps, you know, that had passed away or maybe was never human, but I suppose watching us might be a form of entertainment. I don't know, just a theory, but it's the only one I got right now, so we're going to go with it. But ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up our show tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this installment of the Bedtime Stories from Beyond. I, of course, enjoy doing it all the time. If you have a paranormal story of your very own that you'd like to share, please send it in. The address is paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and I did receive one email today, and it's from one of our listeners, so I'm going to be reading that on Friday, is my plan. I don't think anything's going on Friday. I'll have to look at the schedule to be sure, but I think it's just me, so I'll read the email on Friday. So if you have an account or encounter of your very own that you'd like to submit to be read on Friday's show, please send it in. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. But tomorrow the new podcast comes out, so make sure that if you're not subscribed, that you will definitely get subscribed. Oh, I see. Cryptids, Myths, and Mysteries with Lee McNew. Good to see you, Lee. I assume you're Lee. I think you've been in here before, right? But if not, welcome to the show. Good to see you. I'm always thrilled to see new people stopping in and checking out the shows. And yeah, we can always collaborate. I love me some collaborations. So, but I guess that's going to wrap it up for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Take care, be good, be kind, be nice, help each other out, find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. I'll be back tomorrow night with Don for the 2-hour show, and we will cover everything from cryptids to UFOs to ghosts to God only knows what. We don't always know where we're going with those 2-hour shows, but we always have a good time doing them, so I hope you'll join us and join in the fun. Thank you, Gemini. Great to see you. Isaac Areola, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. It's great to see you as well. And everybody else. I'm just looking through the names. I don't see any other brand new names, but if you're new and you're just checking it out, thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate it. Love you too, Cha-Cha. You know I love you, but I don't love that name too much. So, you know, another name might be cool. I'm just saying. But anyway, guys, you guys have a wonderful night. Take care, Bell Prepper. Good to see you. You're brand new. You are. You're always brand new. But that's it. That's all we got. That's all I got for you, except for my unending and undying love. And you can take that with you. Put it in your heart. I'll see you guys tomorrow night, hopefully. Again, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 7 days a week. We're always doing a show right here on YouTube. So if you're sitting around wondering, what can I do with this night? Just remember, when 7 p.m. Pacific time comes around, you could be right here enjoying this fun. All right, guys. Have a great night. Love you all, and sweet dreams.